My name is Hannah, and this is my beauty budget. Hey y'all, it is I, your host, Hannah Louise Poston, and I'm doing some night filming. Joe is out tonight, a rare occurrence, so I'm taking the opportunity, honestly, to sit down and get caught up on getting some content out for you guys. It's just been such an insanely busy month. I've been busy with a plethora of projects, some of which are boring and you guys don't want to know about, and some of which I can't really talk about yet or I don't really feel like talking about yet. But it's been kind of rough having to scale back on my YouTube videos, like on the number of videos, when I had just gotten so excited about ramping them up, because I haven't been filming less for lack of ideas or for lack of wanting to. It's simply for lack of time. So this weekend I'm trying to get ahead, trying to get a bunch of content produced that I can get out a bunch of content over the next couple of weeks, because that is what I really want to do. So today, should we get into the meat of the video, or should I just tell you? Today I'm filming some videos I didn't plan very well. Today, actually this evening, I did set myself a couple of videos to film where it's just kind of chatty, because that's sort of what I feel like doing. And this one, I got the idea for it. This is what I'll do. I'll tell you about the idea for it, and then I'll transition into the meat of the video, and then the meat will be really meaty, I promise. I got the idea for this video honestly from a couple of comments, and I do have them here to read to you. So they were a while ago. There was one comment that I actually screenshotted, and then I accidentally deleted the screenshot. And so I actually went back today. I actually went back today and found it. It was from Alexa. About 4 months ago, Alexa commented on one of my videos where I was talking about shopping my stash for wish list dupes, so using what I have instead of buying new things. She commented that she keeps searching for Holy Grail products, and that's kind of the problem that comes up against the act of shopping your stash for wish list dupes. It's not necessarily about being tempted by new products, but about the constant temptation of this fantastical idea of a Holy Grail product. So her comment says, "My issue is that I keep searching for the Holy Grail product. I don't have a large collection. I do have much more than I need, for example, around 7 eyeshadow palettes. But I want to purchase and agonize over purchases because I like what I own, but I haven't found a Holy Grail." This is where the idea for this video started brewing in my head. She says, "Same with foundation. I have 4 different foundations. I like what I own, but I'm always considering purchases to find that Holy Grail foundation. I do sample and I try not to buy and return. And with new makeup coming out all the time, I'm trying to purchase and not break the bank, but I'm always trying to find that Holy Grail. So I don't want to buy multiples of anything. I just want something better because I still haven't found the best." So she's basically saying that she's not someone who's collecting on the premise of abundance. She's not going out and buying another eyeshadow palette to add to her collection and then another one to add to her collection instead of using what she has. She's buying one to add to her collection because she's hoping that it will be her Holy Grail. And then when it's not, she's buying another one to add to her collection, and same with foundations, etc., etc. So there's that. I have a feeling this is really the meat of the video, but I'll tell you about Daisy's comment and then we'll transition. Hashtag YouTuber. Hashtag content creator. Hashtag organized. Okay, so my friend Daisy from the YouTube channel Daisy Beauty, it was in a video about how I spent my budget. It was how I spent my budget in July. And she said, "Hannah," Daisy, hi, "Hannah, that talk about the need for perfection and buying things for perfection is exactly how I've been feeling lately. I feel like I need to buy things so that I can have the perfect things. Buying so much skincare so I can have perfect skin." And then this last part is sort of the nub that is contributing to this video. Daisy says, "Never being happy with what I have because it's not a favorite or a Holy Grail." Then she says, "It's exhausting," with which I totally agree. These 2 comments, and then a slew of other ones that have sort of similar feelings about them, made me want to make this video about the idea of the Holy Grail. And that's what this is going to be. I feel like I should have put those comments in the meat of the video, but it's over and done with now. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. I feel like I'm not in the center of the frame. Ever since I put my camera, I'm not. Should I just move over? Ever since I put my camera back up on its like thingy thing after taking it down off of its thingy thing for the overhead shooting. It's been a little bit thingy thing. So thank you, Alexa and Daisy, for your thoughtful comments and for being willing to share your experience. I feel like these comments, even though my comment sections are full of these kinds of comments, I feel like we shouldn't overlook the fact that it's really extraordinary. It's special to be able to say in writing that you see yourself, like you see your own behavior, you see your compulsion, even if you haven't acted on it yet, even if you haven't managed to change it yet. The first step is seeing yourself. So I applaud you both, and I applaud so many of you who are frequently leaving me comments and sometimes sending me private messages, DMs, emails, just basically saying to me, I see myself, I'm starting to see myself better. And I think that that's amazing. And I love that I'm like surrounded by that energy in my online spaces, and it encourages me and it helps to support me. So I think that that's really awesome. Not being able to care for what you own very deeply because it doesn't feel like it has that holy grail status, or doesn't feel like it has that favorite status. It doesn't feel perfect. And the act of stacking that feeling of it being subpar up against the fantasy of a thing that you have yet to buy, that is very familiar to me. That was my life before my no-buy year. And I didn't just do it with makeup. I did it with like my relationship, my career, my daily experience, my emotional state. Like everything was not as good as what I could have. And so I was always hungering for more. And a lot of times that resulted in me spending way, way too much money on buying things in the hopes that they would give me a better life in some way by being my holy grail product, or by some magical combustion process by which a lipstick suddenly makes you feel like your life is unfolding as it should. I was always spending money to try to heal that issue. So I totally get this. I totally understand the idea of a holy grail. And I think that those of us who are passionate, and especially when we're passionate lovers of beauty and passionate examiners of our own lives, we are sort of more disposed to hunger for a holy grail or a favorite, because we have had experiences of really deep appreciation and excitement for beautiful things. And we have had these feelings, these sort of bursts of joy, these highs that have resulted from beautiful things. And so we feel like that should be the baseline, that for something to be a holy grail, it has to be giving us that all the time. And I wanted to make this video to challenge that idea and to kind of bring into the picture as a counterweight to that idea, the idea that everything is always changing, that the status of everything, that the ability of each makeup item to transform us, to sort of be the ideal tool to transform oneself, that its ability is always changing. On one day, the lipstick might be the perfect lipstick, and on the next day, it might not quite be, for a variety of reasons. So I just want to kind of like insert this idea of change into the idea of the Holy Grail. And that reminds me that one of the first things I meant to say in this video, and I feel like we're like quite far into it already and I haven't said it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and say it now, is that Holy Grail, it's something that I love. It's makeup community semantics. It's like it's a language that the makeup community has claimed and kind of refashioned for ourselves. But on thinking about it, I realized that I think that Holy Grail has two ways of being interpreted in the makeup community. I think we employ it in two ways. One way, we say it's my Holy Grail when we're talking about a product that is our current favorite of any one category. So I have a primer right now, the VDL Lumi Layer Primer, that I would rather reach for than any other primer. I have never loved a primer as much as I love it. It's my top primer. It's my best. So in makeup community speak, I would say that it's my Holy Grail primer. But I only received it a couple of months ago and started using it. And before that, the Clarins Green SOS color correcting primer was my favorite primer I had ever used. It was the one that I would rather reach for over top of anything else. I would have said that it was my holy grail. And I think that the way that to correctly employ the term in this situation would be to say that the SOS primer by Clarins was my holy grail, and then it was dethroned or was usurped by the VDL primer, which is now my new holy grail primer. But it's not problematic, I don't think, to use the term holy grail as a replacement for the best I've ever used or my current favorite. I think that that's what the word means to us now. And language is alive and it's constantly evolving. And it is okay that we have taken this term and that we're using it to mean this thing. Because when I use the term, I'm communicating with other people who speak my language and we understand each other. And that's what language is for. However, there is an opening for a bit of a problem when you look at that use of the term next to the other use of the term. And the other use of the term holy grail, a holy grail, it's like a more faithful and historical use of the term, because a holy grail in Arthurian legend, a holy grail, and therefore sort of at large in English language culture, a grail is something that has been sought and sought and sought, like something that has been intensively sought. It is something that you quest after. It's something you spend a lot of time and energy searching for. It is something that you, in some cases, devote your life to trying to find, and therefore it kind of represents transformation, the end of the journey, the end of the road, having arrived, having become the person that you were meant to be at the end of your journey or at the end of your road. All of which I think is, at least for me in my life, has been problematic. Like this idea that there's an ideal version of myself that will someday manifest, that I'll get there eventually. And it's everywhere, from like my emotional health and my emotional intelligence and my level of happiness through to like how my skin looks, right? That on all of those counts, I tend to live with this idea that I'm not there yet. I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't arrived. I haven't figured out how to make my skin look perfect because I haven't tried all of the right products yet, and I haven't found the perfect skin-like foundation, and I haven't gotten the perfect skincare, and I haven't found the perfect kind of diet to support my skin. And I also haven't like gone to enough therapy and done enough meditation, and I haven't instituted enough routines, and I haven't talked through enough stuff with my partner to have like my health and all of these other realms be ideal. So I'm always like feeling like I'm questing. It's not bad to be questing. I mean, it's good to quest for self-improvement just in general. But I do think it is bad to feel constantly subpar or constantly like you haven't arrived yet, and to be like waiting for this feeling that it's the moment, the day has come, the search is over, this product is the one. I do think that that can be detrimental. So this is just to say that it's really interesting that we use the term holy grail in makeup to mean the product that we like the best of everything we've ever tried, when the term holy grail in legend or in language is specifically technically used to denote something that you search for and search for and search for, that you essentially spend your life searching for. So I want to take a hard left turn right now and talk about another realm in which I have kind of misguidedly attached myself to the idea of perfection and the idea of like perfect power, an object with perfect transformational power, and then had to like unteach myself that and back off from that. And that is in the realm of poetry. A lot of you know that I am a writer. That is my like career of careers. It isn't one that pays consistently because I'm not teaching right now, and most writers in contemporary America, that's how they make money. They become professors, and especially poets, which is most of what I've studied. I have a master's degree in poetry, and I am a poet. I have several published poems, and I'm working on a manuscript of poems, and I have a website where you can read some of them if you're interested. I'll link that down below. But this is just to say, as an obsessive artist in the realm of poetry, I have spent my entire young adult and adult life trying to understand what makes a poem good. That is like the biggest question of my actual life. What makes a poem good? I think about it all the time. Sometimes it feels like I think about it all day, every day. And I've had lots of answers, lots of different times in my life. And there are lots of answers that have stuck around. There are a lot of things that I strongly believe about what makes a poem good. And I'm not going to like bore you with the whole list of them right now, but I have one. It's like my brain is swimming with that stuff. I say what makes a poem good pretty confidently now, pretty easily, the phrase, like thinking about what makes a poem good. But it's been hard in the past not to slip from there into the question of what makes a poem perfect, or what makes a poem ideal, what makes it the one eternally, what gives it like eternal burning power, like a flame that burns forever, like magic, like what makes a poem that. And for a long time in my youth and my young adulthood, I felt like that was what I was searching for. That was like my holy grail information. I wanted that information. And the radical thing that happened to me as I aged, I mean, I'm like 34 now, right? So I'm not aged, but I have aged through several phases of my relationship with poetry. The radical thing that happened to me was I lived enough years as a student, like an apprentice of poetics, to fall in love with specific poems for really specific reasons, like to really, really have them. They were essentially my holy grails. And the example that I pulled up is one of those amazing poems in the English language. It's The Fish by Elizabeth Bishop. And probably if you studied poetry ever, like in grade school or in high school in the United States, you might have studied it, because I think it's pretty commonly studied. But it's the one that starts, I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat half out of water with my hook fast in a corner of his mouth. He didn't fight, he hadn't fought at all. I don't want to read the whole thing because I'm not sure if it's probably still copyrighted. You know, she catches this fish, and it's basically she catches this fish and she looks at him, and he has like 3 hooks in his mouth where he's been caught before and struggled and escaped, and he's got these big beautiful eyes, and his skin hangs in strips like ancient wallpaper and all this stuff. It's so beautiful. I'll definitely link it down below. You should go read it. At the end, she's looking at the fish, she's looking at the boat, she's looking at the water and the oil in the water in the boat, and she says, she's like staring and staring and staring at the fish until everything was rainbow, 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 and I let the fish go. And that's the end. And like, I'm like almost crying just like thinking about it and talking about it right now, because it is historically one of my holy grail poems. Like, it makes me feel all the feelings. It has taught me so much about poetics. It has taught me so much about what makes a poem good. It is so good. It's got that power. And for years, it felt like it was burning like an eternal flame for me. And still sometimes when I go back to it and read it, like even right now, I feel like I'm having this extremely emotional reaction to it, maybe because I'm sharing it with you guys and I'm like talking about it on this platform, and that's really meaningful to me. But I loved this poem, you know, from sort of like late childhood, and kept loving it. And then I would say maybe around the age of 28 or 29, when I was first in grad school, I was continuing to think obsessively about what makes a poem good. And I went back to this poem one day, as I often do, like revisiting my favorites. And I read it, and it just didn't feel like it was burnt, like it was burning like the eternal flame. Like, it just didn't feel like perfection anymore. And I didn't think it was bad. It wasn't like I'd forgotten all of the practical elements that make it amazing, because it will never not be an amazing achievement, a really, really sort of beautiful work of art, and perfect in its own way. But it was like for years, I was the lock and it was the key. And then one day suddenly the key didn't quite fit in the lock anymore. Like maybe it was like rusted a little bit, and it would still turn a little bit, but it wasn't a perfect fit anymore. It just wasn't my holy grail anymore. And new poems had come along since then and were my holy grails. It's not as if I stopped having that relationship ever with poetry. There are always so many of them in my life that I feel that way about, and many of them I had continued to feel that way about. And for some reason, this one just wasn't anymore. And it occurred to me, and again, it was something I'd been meditating on, so it helped that I had been thinking kind of in a meta way about the idea of the Holy Grail in poetry. But it occurred to me that poems change and people change. I mean, the poems don't change, but the only life of a poem is the life that it lives inside of the mouths of people and the minds of people, right? It doesn't, that's the way that it stays alive. So they do change in that people change, and then the way that the poem lives inside of you changes. And a poem can be perfect and then not be perfect. And that really hit me like a ton of bricks at the time as a grad student in this discipline. It marked a moment of tremendous evolution in my apprenticeship to poetry. So let's bring it back to makeup. Some of you are probably like, Hannah, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about this? To me, and it's to me because it's my life and it's like my life story, but to me, it is the perfect example of the fact that perfection doesn't exist. Like, even in a work of art, even in something so intensely labored over, something that to me is so much more difficult than a lipstick to make, so much more finely wrought. Even on that level, perfection, the feeling of perfection is fleeting, even if it fleets over the period of like 10 years, which is what happened for me with the fish, right? Even if it takes that long for it to change, it's still not permanent. It still changes with time. The feeling of perfection changes. It will come and go, is what I'm saying. It will come and go. And therefore, perfection, the idea of it just isn't accessible. It's not real. Because of the comments, the many, many comments that I've read. When I was searching for Daisy's and Alexa's comments, I typed Holy Grail into the search field in the back end in my comment section, and it was like hundreds, like so many people are discussing this idea of a Holy Grail in my comment section alone. And it made me feel like I wanted to bring to bear what is to me the most powerful example from my own life history to talk about, maybe to offer a memory for you, if you've listened to my story about the fish, a memory that will help you to check yourself before you wreck yourself when you find yourself kind of on that hamster wheel of obsession, searching for a holy grail in makeup. What you have right now when it comes to like whatever foundation you're working with or whatever eyeshadows you're working with or whatever, what you have is what you have. And if it works, that's awesome. Like, if it's working well enough for you to put together looks or have playtime or feel like you're doing a little, I don't know, color correcting or blemish concealing or whatever, if it works, that's awesome. And the feeling of perfection will come and go. And a lot of times it's affected by other things. I think that when we're looking for a holy grail foundation, what we're really looking for, like Daisy was saying, is perfect skin. Like, if you keep buying skincare, what you're really feeling like what you need to have is perfect skin. And yes, you're trying to buy tools that will facilitate that, but I think a lot of times we slip. It's like a slippery slope. It's like the very logical idea of buying a tool to facilitate a better skin or whatever. You immediately slide way past that and you start buying and buying and buying. I mean, I'm saying you, but I mean like past Hannah. I'd start buying and buying and buying because there was like this loop in my brain that connected the act of buying and buying with the hope of achieving perfection in one way or another. And really underneath it all was like the idea of the perfect life. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't even about perfect skin or something. It was about suddenly feeling like better all the time. Finding a foundation that's like a slightly better tone match for your skin is not going to make you suddenly make you feel better all the time. Like, it's just not. Like, I don't know if I need to give evidence for that. Trust me, it's not. piece number one of this, I don't know what this is, a talk, like a discussion, it's like an opening of the conversation, as people say, because I'm really curious to know what you guys say about this down below. Piece number one, the feeling of perfection as it relates to your products, your belongings, will come and go. I've had products that I don't use for a while and then suddenly they become my favorite again and they're like so perfect, and vice versa. Acknowledging that perfection itself isn't real, like the perfect foundation for you, it doesn't exist. Did you hear me? I'm going to say it again. The Holy Grail foundation, it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a Holy Grail. And if you're using Holy Grail foundation to mean the one that you currently have, that's your favorite, that's the best you've ever used, even if you've been buying it for 40 years, either it will be or it could be usurped someday, right? It isn't actually the cup from which Jesus drank wine at the Last Supper. It's just a foundation. And it's not, like, Holy Grail doesn't really apply. So that's number one. The idea of perfections and the feeling of it will come and go. And the second piece of the puzzle for me is that not going into debt, and I know this doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, but it certainly applies to me, and it applied very much to past Hannah, although she wasn't willing to acknowledge it. Not going into debt is so much more important than the ecosystem of unstable idealism that's going on in your makeup drawer. It's like inside your makeup drawer, things are like changing all the time in terms of how perfect they are for you. They're getting more perfect and they're getting less perfect and they're getting better and they're getting not as good and they're getting to be things you really love and they're getting to be things you might declutter, right? That's always going on inside your makeup drawer. Not going into debt matters 1,000 times more than that little science experiment that's happening. I don't know does it help to like disconnect the two things from each other? Sort of like cut the cord between your own changing relationship with what you already have, cut the cord between that and the act of spending money on new stuff. I think that this mindset, the mindset of cutting the cord or the mindset of perfection, like a Holy Grail product being a lie, I think that it's freeing. It frees you to choose when you want to buy something new for reasons of enjoyment. So it makes you free to focus on whether trying out the new thing will make you happy, like in and of itself. Not even trying, but using the new thing. So if you're like, I think using that thing would, in and of itself, be lovely, and I have the budget for it, yada, yada, yada. Again, it's like cutting the cord or disconnecting the idea of the isolated enjoyment that you'll get out of using that product and sort of the gratification that you'll get from having chosen and invested or chosen like to spend some of your money on that project, chosen to like weight its significance with your budget, the satisfaction that you might get out of that, separating that from the idea of improving on what you already have or like fixing the problem that you have, which is like the hole in your collection or the fact that your collection isn't perfectly curated or the fact that your collection isn't like, I don't know, like clean and symmetrical in your mind, like a weird square. The mindset that there's no such thing as a Holy Grail frees me from feeling like I'm in a constant state of searching for perfection, and it frees me from constantly stacking what I do have up against what I don't have. Thinking about my makeup this way makes good for now, like it works for now. It makes that the best something can be. So if you knock Holy Grail off the chart, if you can't get that high, if a product can't rise to that level of distinction, the best something can be is kind of like the first definition that I talked about, which is like my favorite one that I've ever used before for now, or like the one that I would rather use more than all my other things right now. Good for now, or the best that I have right now, that's the top. That's like the blue ribbon. That's the highest distinction, the highest award possible for like a lipstick in my collection, right? And that is just a huge weight off my chest compared to how I used to feel before about ideal makeup or like what was maybe possible with makeup. It's a much easier way of moving through my days with relation to this collection of stuff that I have. It kind of reminds me that your face underneath your makeup is more important than the makeup on it. which is something that I kind of learned from my YouTube video, from like watching myself and editing myself. I'm coming up on 2 years. I think like 3 months away ish from my 2 year anniversary on YouTube. And looking back over it, one of the things I've really learned over these weird 2 years of constantly watching footage of myself all the time and editing footage of myself, one of the things I've learned is that the way it's really like the way that I behave, the things I say, the way my face moves, the way I animate, it really matters more than how I am done up. It matters more than the makeup on my face. And the videos that I always think are like the best, like when I'm watching them back and editing them, that feel the most compelling to me and where I feel like I've done the best job, it's never the ones where I'm like, my makeup is really on point in that video. It's always the ones where I feel like I'm the most animated as myself, like the most on point, the most articulate, the most alive. The impact of that outshines like good or bad makeup. It really does. I didn't know that. And I don't think this is just true about myself. I mean, I think that we know that about other people, but it's really hard to know it about yourself. It's hard to believe it about yourself because when you look in the mirror, you just see yourself like that's what I look like in the mirror to myself. I'm like, hello, oh Hannah, gotta wear lipstick. That's kind of been a blessing of YouTube, but I know that not everyone, I mean, it's not for everyone. So I'm just telling you, I'm reporting back to all of you who don't have YouTube channels or who don't have some reason to edit hours and hours of footage of yourself. And I'm letting you know that as hard as it might be to believe, what you do with your face matters like 1,000 times more than the makeup that's on your face. What you do with your life every day is way more important than the makeup on your face. And therefore, the best you can do with the makeup that you have, or like good enough, or the best that you happen to have right now, is absolutely good enough. And what you have just being the best you can do for yourself right now is not going to hold you back from being the most effective version of yourself and doing your work in the world. It's just not. There's no such thing as a holy grail, so just put on your makeup and get on with it. That's how I feel about the idea of sort of undermining the search for perfection. And then if you have a little time in your life and you have budgeted for it and you want to spend your time kind of deciding to try something new in makeup, and you want to spend some of your budget on that, and spending both your time and your money on that will bring you joy, then that's great. And if you do end up doing that and you do end up budgeting some time and budgeting some money for buying like a new foundation, and it happens to end up being better at that time, like you happen to end up liking it today more than you like the other foundations that you have today, then great. Then that's great. But I think that that's kind of like the end of it. It's just that if all of those stars align, then that's great. But if that's not happening right now for some reason, for reasons of time, for reasons of money, for reasons of the fact that when you did set aside some time and some money and you tried something out, it didn't happen to be better than what you already have. If those stars aren't all happening to align, it's really not a big deal. There's no tragedy. Like there's nothing wrong. There's nothing missing. There's nothing missing from your life. I feel like I should call this video. I haven't decided what to title this video yet because as you can tell, I came into it with a bit of an abstract idea to discuss, but I feel like I should call it "There's no such thing as a holy grail and there's nothing missing from your life." Maybe I will. Maybe that will be the title. I feel like that's not I mean it's like alluring but not clickbaity because I 100% delivered on that content concept, didn't I? The last thing that I have in my notes is just to say that if you feel like your life is being consumed by the quest for holy grail products, and if there's kind of like a little anxiety scratching away at you about the fact that your collection isn't complete or isn't like perfectly curated, and by that I mean you don't have a holy grail in every category, one possibility is just to give up the search. Just acknowledge that the holy grail is a fantasy. If there's this fantasy thing, right, the fantasy of the holy grail, you can either choose to spend your life questing for it, or you can remove yourself from the party, the questing party, and do something else. And what would that be? Like, if you're eating up a bunch of time and energy, and not to mention money right now, searching for holy grails in all of your categories, not to mention on top of that, anxiety. If the fact that maybe you don't have the time or money to search, what's happening is you're just spending a lot of emotional and mental energy on it. What if you just stopped spending all of that stuff? How much time would you have left? How much energy and money? And what might you do with those things? That is the question with which I'm going to leave you. I hope that this video made some kind of sense. I kind of thought it was going to be short because I was like, oh, Alexa and Daisy left these awesome comments bringing up this idea of the Holy Grail and the exhausting search for it. So I'm just gonna go on camera and I'm gonna be like, guess what, bitches? There's no such thing as a Holy Grail. Mic drop. And that's not what happened. I'm not sure what day this will go up, but I'm excited for that day because I'm excited to get in the comments and see what you guys say. I appreciate you so much for watching, and I hope that you are remembering to take extra good care of yourself this week so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work.